Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Welcome to Across the Pitch Extra. My name is Phil Kennedy, and I'm joined by Tony Robinson today for the very first edition of Across the Pitch Extra. If you had a chance to hear our episode that we recently did where Tony and I discussed the Accrington season and a few other topics, including the upcoming walk that you could do. It's the sponsored walk in Accrington. We talked about where we're going to do a one-topic short podcast each week called Across the Pitch Extra, and that's what that is here today. And Tony, our question here today, or I guess topic more than question, is the EFL potential bailout by the Premier League. It seems the British government is kind of saying, Premier League, you need to kick some money down the pyramid and, help out some of these League One, League Two teams, especially that might be shutting the doors. And it seems like they're reluctant to do so. So it's definitely a hot button topic. And Tony, I'm really excited to discuss it with you today.
Yeah, I think this is a great topic to kick off the new extra that we're doing on Across the Pitch. And let's get to it, Phil.
All right, Tony. Well, I'm going to let you go first, and you can handle the opening kickoff of extra time, if you will. And
Are we on the clock now, Phil?
Not yet.
Okay.
And the whistle blows now.
Okay, here we go. The EFL bailout or proposed bailout. This is, as we said, is a hot topic, and the government is being reluctant, holding back, looking at the Premier League to filter some funds down to the lower divisions. The Premier League are, as expected, reluctant. They don't seem to want to encourage or assist. And hesitant in giving funds, especially to the championship teams, where they may be helping a team get promoted to take a position in the Premier League. I think they're more receptive to give money to League One or League Two, but it seems to be a stumbling block right now is that the Premier League just doesn't want to filter money down. I
think it's not to interrupt you, Tony, yeah. But I think it's just important to establish that I think the Premier League's primary objection, at least to the government, is to the government's stance, is that the government isn't pressuring any other businesses to give money to a competing business per se. To put it in U.S. terms, they're saying, well, this is like asking Amazon to give money to Walmart and Target or something like that. It's definitely not that cut and dry, but I think it's just important to establish what the Premier League's kind of side of it is.
Well, yes, and I think the EFL obviously had plans for fans to return in some format starting right around now in October, but unfortunately that has been put on hold. And so you've got expenses being incurred especially for the League One and League Two teams, behind closed door costs, stewarding costs, safety officer, medical costs. You still got these expenses to pay, and you're incurred, and you just don't have the funds coming in from gate receipts, which is what really drives the revenue for a lot of the League One and League Two teams. And I think that the problem that some people have is when they look at the Premier League and they see the money they spend, like spending $1 billion on players in the transfer window, and they're reluctant to sort of help the football pyramid, which to me is is just an important part of the football structuring. Without the full pyramid. Really?
Well, that's the key point. I basically have two key points that I want to make here, and one of them is exactly what you're saying, Tony. Is so I think with the English Premier League's claim to being the best league in the world and the one that brings in all of that TV money, what is always the argument? Well, sure, Germany might have Bayern Munich and Spain might have Madrid and Barcelona and France might have PSG and there might be Juventus, and maybe those teams are as good or better than the top teams. But then when you get to teams 10 through 20 at the table, our league is stronger. That 15th team in the English league might be as good as the fifth team in Germany. And that is all built on the strength of the championship, and the championship being able to have the quality of teams where you can have a team like Aston Villa that was in the championship 2 years ago and then turns around 2 years later, less than 2 years after being in the championship, they're beating Liverpool, arguably the best team in the world, 7-2. I mean, that just tells you about the quality of the championship and why it's so important to pay that money down to the pyramid. And that doesn't even get into the fact that they're loading players down to get them game experience, and that helps the first team for the Premier League also.
Well, I think yes, it's a big a big discussion point is players coming from the lower leagues where they start off, they get a promotion, maybe the championship, and then on to the Premier League. There's many of a player in the Premier League now that have learned their craft in the lower leagues, whether coming from a lower league team like, say, Vardy from Fleetwood up to the Premier League, or players that go out on loan to the lower leagues. Now, the one thing that's been sort of in the news the last couple of days is the CEO from Man City, Soriano, saying that he thinks that the EFL structurally 1 and 2 may not be sustainable, and teams, if they go out, so be it, and replace them with Premier League B teams, which is sort of a European model, which I'm totally against that. I think that is that's a cop-out really from the Premier League, and I think it's just something that should be kicked to the sidelines, very quickly. I think one of the things too, Phil, is the championship. The problem is that they've got owners that a lot of owners have money. I think the total value of the net worth of the owners in the championship is 30 some odd billion pounds. So there is money there. But one of the problems is that they're spending 107% of their income, or 107% is being spent on players' wages, which is not a sustainable business. And so I can see then that's a problem for the Premier League to help out a team that's overspending, and I don't agree with that. So when it comes to a bailout, I think there has to be, you have to almost separate the championship type of bailout to them, if there is any, just maybe to some teams that don't have the billionaire owners. And I think it has to separate the bailout, if there is one. If it's just from the Premier League to the League One and League Two, I think they have to be, there are different kettle of fish, League One, League Two to the championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, regardless of maybe some bad spending and things like that, that the Premier League needs the pyramid more than it realizes, if you will. And I think it's just the strength of that pyramid, and that the fact that owners are willing to spend that way, because what they're gambling at is trying to get into that Premier League. And if you take away that, then you're going to have these reserve teams that they're like. We had Tariq Uwakwe on the show a few weeks ago, and he said, if you're playing for a reserve team, the goal is different. You're not really so much playing for 3 points. And we see that in the USL Championship over here in the United States, where you have independent teams and reserve teams mixed together. And the reserve teams, sometimes they're just out there trying to get their players better, and it ends up having a negative impact on the table, has a negative impact upon the quality of the league. I mean, that's one of the things about the championship is it's a second tier, but it's one of the best leagues in the world. One of the things that's held up is that 1 through 24, there are good teams in the championship that it would be first tier in most countries. And then if you start having Manchester City B in there, it's just not the same thing anymore. And this is my second key point. And Tony, I know you're a Formula One fan, and you're familiar with, like team orders. Like back in the day when they used to have Rubens Barrichello pull over so Michael Schumacher can get the win, that type of thing. Well, I'm not necessarily talking about team orders like that, but over here in NASCAR, they have teammates the same as they would in Formula One, but you would never hear an owner just wouldn't get away with saying pull over and let your teammate win. You're always still competing. And Daryl Waltrip, who is a commentator, he came up with a word called co-opetition. And co-opetition means sometimes you're competing, other times you're working together for the common good. And to me, with the Premier League and the Championship, it's a co-opetition system. And yes, you're going to compete to beat each other on the pitch, but the strength of the Championship is where you need to cooperate for the common good.
Well, and one thing I was going to mention earlier on is that when these players come up from the lower leagues to the Premier League, and then some of that money is filtered down in add-ons or transfer fees to the lower leagues. And there's a player that just got signed by I believe Aston Villa from Watkins from QPR. Or for Brentford, I should say, sorry. And he initially came from Exeter. Well, some of the money that was just paid for him will filter down to Exeter, which will help their budget. So there is.
Well, yeah, he was the guy that scored 3 of those 7 goals in the Liverpool game.
Now, there's a couple of ideas that I have in the way of, the things that you could, the Premier League could do to help out. Some of the teams that get relegated, they get parachute payments, and they last for, I believe, around 3 years. And now some of those teams get promoted straight back or after a year or two. I think if they get promoted within those 3 years, they should forfeit those parachute payments. Those parachute payments really could go into a fund to be administered to the league teams that would require assistance. So there's that way to look at it. Another thing too is I'm in the camp that it's not only the Premier League should do something. I think the government should be a combination of the government and the Premier League combined to do the bailout. The reason I say that is because the government is on record in the UK as handing out just recently £20 million to the National League 3 divisions so they could start their season. So they've made that commitment already to the National League is one point. The other point is that they've handed out £1.57 billion to the arts as an entertainment and a way to keep the arts engaged and sustainable. And to me, the Football League, the EFL, really is in that category of providing entertainment. They're parts of an important part of a lot of communities in England. No better example than Accrington Stanley, part of the community. And that's why I think that there should be a combination of the government and the Premier League. Put some money into a pot, determine the amount. They've offered apparently £50 million, and the EFL wants 250 million. So you've got a starting and finishing point, so you can come somewhere in between. But the leagues the teams should basically gather their expenses
2 minutes remaining. 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. Okay. Well, I'm just going to wrap this point up, Phil. Is that I think that any team that is behind closed doors as those expenses submits their expenses to this fund, and more sort of like an insurance claim. And you put in a claim, you substantiate your loss, and you get paid back your expenses. You don't profit from it, but you get paid the expense you've outlaid. So I think it's a way. There's a solution can be arrived at, but I think it has to be a combination of the EFL, the Premier League, and the government getting together to help League One and Two, and then come up with a maybe diversified or another plan for the championship.
I think those are all great ideas, Tony, and I think that ultimately probably a combination of something, like you said, in between the 50 and 250 million number, say maybe $100 million from the Premier League, something from the government, say maybe $100 million from the government gets you to 200 million. And then there maybe could be some interest-free loan systems, which is kind of what I think that you were referring to. But ultimately, I think we both agree that something needs to be done to save these teams, and that putting the Premier League reserve teams into the Football League is not the answer.
It's not the answer, and there's I think all the League One teams are in favor of some contribution from the
15
Premier
seconds.
League. So yeah, we've definitely agreed the bailout should come from both the government and the Premier League, and let's hope it comes soon, Phil.
The fourth official has added on an extra 1 minute.
Extra. Okay, injury time. Go ahead, Phil.
Well, Tony, I really think that you've hit the nail on the head here. And I just really wanted to take this extra minute to say what a great first conversation this has been. And I think this is going to be a winner, and I look forward to doing it with you every week, Tony.
Yeah, I think we've got some good topics out there, and it's putting sort of a time limit and gives us a focus, and we get our points across, and we don't sort of drift off into some other tangents, and we focus on the topic at hand. And I think we've covered a lot of good things today, Phil. And yeah, it's been great to chat on this topic, and let's hope some of our suggestions come to fruition.
I agree. Until next time, Tony, on Stanley on.
On Stanley on, Phil.
Cheers.
Cheers.